the work of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So predatory lending, junk fees, combating senior abuse and fraud. There are a lot of bad actors right now in that space when it comes to financial institutions and banking, housing, homelessness. And of course, I was the lead negotiator to the White House for student debt cancellation. And I want to say a little about that, because a lot of people think asking someone to cancel the debt for loans that people took out is an unfair thing, or they think it only affects young people, and it's not true. It might surprise you to know that I have people in this district that are 76 years old that are still paying on student loans. And they now owe more than they took out. And they have cried in my arms and said, I'm going to die still owing on these loans. At this point, I'm only touching the interest. I'm not even touching the principal. And I have senior citizens living on fixed incomes who've had their benefits garnished because they defaulted on those student loans. So student loan debt, yes, is it an issue for the millennials and the Gen Z that they, of course. It makes it harder for them to start a business, purchase a home, grow a family. But it's an intergenerational issue because it's also affecting our seniors in this way. Sometimes in one household, you have parents that are still paying on loans, and then you have parents that might be paying on their kids' loans in the same household. They're called Parent Plus loans, right? This is a $2 trillion crisis. It's an economic justice issue. It's a racial justice issue. Black and brown students borrow and default at higher rates. Now, that's not because we're not responsible people. It's because Black Americans were locked out of every major federal relief program in this country, from the Homestead Act to the GI Bill, and then because of the practice of redlining, Black Americans have had gains in income but not wealth. So Black students borrow at higher rates and default at higher rates. And so this is why I took this issue on, and I was the lead negotiator in the House of Representatives to the White House, working closely with Senator Warren and Chuck Schumer. And ultimately, we would force President Biden to do something we call an executive action. And so with the stroke of a pen, he wrote an executive action that would have brought relief to 43 million borrowers. Now, I want to say something for people in the room who might not support this policy. I took out loans. I defaulted on those loans. I paid those loans back. It took me over 20 years. And I believe that it is my job to deliver a love letter to future generations to make it easier for the next person. I don't want people in a chokehold with this debt. So I don't think it's fair, in my opinion, to say, well, I took out loans and I paid them off. Why should I pay for someone else's? When the cost of higher education has increased by 500%. 500%. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. And this debt has our families and our economy in a chokehold. And so we pushed President Biden to take an action, but guess what? The Supreme Court blocked it. And that is actually why I'm of the belief that this Supreme Court, in its current makeup, we need term limits. We need a binding code of ethics. Amen. Because they've been influenced by billionaires who tried to influence them with lavish gifts and yacht trips and all these different things. We need a thorough investigation into any actions of impropriety. This Supreme Court has repeatedly overturned the will of the majority of the people. Amen. First, they blocked the President Biden's executive action on student debt, which would have brought relief to 43 million borrowers. It would have canceled out debt for 1 in 4 Black borrowers and canceled out debt for 1 in 2 Latino borrowers. Also, this $2 trillion crisis, 2/3 of that debt is on the shoulders of women. So it's a gender justice issue as well. So this Supreme Court overturned the will of the majority of the people on student debt, overturned the will of the majority of the people with overturning Roe, right? And as my colleagues across the aisle have proven, Dobbs was just the beginning. Because first it was about abortion access, which is health care. Then it was about birth control and contraceptives. Then it was about IVF. And now it's around another issue called mifepristone, which is medication, abortion. But not only that, they blocked the executive action for student debt cancellation. They overturned Roe. Then they overturned a 50-year precedent on affirmative action in higher ed. And more recently, they've they've granted presidential immunity, which means that, someone can be completely rogue in that office and not held accountable. So, but on the issue of student debt, what I want to say is that, one, my office has worked with a number of seniors who had their benefits garnished, and we were able to help them to get their benefits restored and back money that they were owed, because that's a grave injustice. And we kept pushing the president and the Secretary of Education, and so even though the student debt blocked the action that would have brought relief to 43 million people, we have been able to bring debt relief to 4 million borrowers. 60,000 of them are in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I wanted to lift that up.